not just become good at doing things. Help us to discover who we are. And as we discover who we are, the things will take care of themselves. But the things won't necessarily help us discover who we are. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Well, my oldest son's going to be graduating here in about 2 months, and it's just hard to believe that my little middle Andrew is now taller than me, and it's hard to keep up with all that's going on. And I'm thinking at this point you get reflective and you wonder about what your hopes are for your kids. And as I think about what are my hopes? Are my hopes just that, well, they won't do anything stupid and they'll make the right decisions as they move forward and do the right thing and not do the wrong thing? Are my hopes just based on their activities? Or are my hopes based on their identity? Are my hopes based on them knowing who they are and having a clear sense of identity, a clear sense that they're loved by God and that it's their identity that defines their actions rather than their actions that causes their identity to bounce up and down? As I think about that, I would much rather have them have a clear sense of their identity, because their actions will take care of themselves if they know who they are. But it's easy to just do things based on fear or anxiety or guilt, and if we're just responding to our actions, then there's no guarantee that we're going to ever develop much of a sense of identity. So with that in the background, as we enter this season of Lent, my question is, do you think God is just the kind of father who wants to make sure his kids do the right things and avoid doing the wrong things? Or do you think that God is the kind of father who wants us to know who we are, who wants us to have a clear sense of our identity? And I'm going to argue that he is a God who, yes, he wants us to make the right decisions and not do dumb things. But I think more than anything else, he wants us to know who we are, to know our identity. Because then we can be who we are in the world. We can be part of what God is up to, and not just go day to day trying to make sure that we don't make mistakes. Jesus, do you remember what happened right before his temptation in the wilderness? Do you remember what was the last event before that?
Was baptized.
His baptism, yes. The assisting ministers are on, because last night CW had the answer and he was the assisting minister. So, yes, Jesus was just baptized by John the Baptist in the Jordan River. And do you remember what happened? The heavens parted, the Holy Spirit came down in the form of a dove, and there was a voice from heaven. You remember what the voice said?
This is my...
You are my beloved Son, with you I am well pleased. The problem I have with that is Jesus hasn't even officially started his job of ministry yet. So what is the Father telling him that he's pleased with? He doesn't have a track record of performance yet. But maybe that's the whole point. Maybe the whole point is that Jesus' baptism doesn't begin him on a journey of being tested to see if he's good enough. Maybe his baptism is living out the identity that he already has. That the whole point is that it's out of that sense of connection, out of that relationship, out of that identity, that Jesus is going to be doing his ministry. It's not that he's going to be doing his ministry hoping to have someday his Father say that he's pleased in him, and hoping someday to earn the title of Son of God. So with that in mind, what is it that Satan is going to attack right away after Jesus has had this reminder of his identity and of the pleasure of his Father? Yeah, I think that Satan might want to just cause him to do wrong things. But I think Satan's biggest goal is to start messing with his sense of identity, his sense of who he is, and why he's there and what he's doing. So Satan's not going to tell him to do anything overtly bad. He's just going to try to distract him from who he is. And isn't that what he did with Adam and Eve too? That what he ends up doing is saying, well, I think you're missing something. Why don't you do this? And what do they end up losing? They end up losing that intimacy, that sense of connection with God, which is really more important than anything else. And I think he's trying to do the same thing with Jesus. So in many ways, he's trying to be this crafty advisor that's telling Jesus how he can be successful. So he ends up saying, you know what, Jesus, if you are hungry or you're weak, you're not going to be able to do the ministry that you are called to do. So why don't you just go ahead and feed yourself, satisfy those cravings, and then you won't have to worry about that, and you can focus on what you're supposed to do. And what does Jesus say? I'm not here to just be defined by my cravings. I'm here to be defined by the word of my Father, by my relationship with my Father. So I'm not going to sacrifice my relationship with my Father just so that I can satisfy my cravings. He knows who he is. He knows what's important. So then this crooked advisor tries to pull him a little bit further down the road, and he says, you know what, you're going to be much more successful in ministry if you are popular, if a lot of people know who you are. So why don't we just do some sort of thing where we'll get everybody to know who you are. So why don't you jump off the pinnacle of the temple? It's way, way up there. The angels will catch you. It's a good publicity stunt. A lot of people will know who you are. And what does Jesus say? I didn't come here to try to be popular based on the world's identity. As a matter of fact, Jesus is going to be doing things that will cause him to not be very popular later on, according to what the world is looking for. So Jesus says, I didn't come here to be popular. I came here to do what my Father called me to do. So then this crooked advisor once again says, okay, you know what? I have one more way I can help you out to succeed in your ministry. And that is, if you just have the right political power, then you can make it happen. So if you just come bow down to me, I have connections. I can manipulate people, I can manipulate situations, and you'll have all the political power you need. And what does Jesus say? That's not the way power works in my Father's kingdom. That's not who I am. Power in my kingdom is not to manipulate people. Power in my kingdom is to free people, to serve people. So I'm not going to accept any of your advice, Satan. So I know who I am. I know what I'm here for. Go away. So I wonder sometimes if we have things backward in the church. I wonder sometimes if we're so stuck on doing the right thing, especially during the season of Lent. This might sound heretical to say this, but I think sometimes Lent is actually sometimes maybe not that helpful the way that we do it. Because I remember as a kid, Lent was just a reminder of how unworthy I was every year. And maybe you never felt that way, and it was just the atmosphere of the church I grew up in. But it was just a reminder that I just didn't measure up, that I just wasn't good enough, and it was just another reminder for 40 days how bad I was. So I better work hard, I got to make sure I do the right things and not mess up this year, because somehow I had this picture, and let me just help you visualize this, that baptism, Jesus' baptism, he heard the voice from heaven saying, "You're my beloved Son, with you I'm well pleased," before he did anything. And as he went out, he lived out of that identity to glorify God and serve people. But I think sometimes we see our baptism, well, that's Jesus. So our baptism, many of us think, well, we're baptized, so now we get to go into the testing period. That, you know what, we sort of got in the door, but we have this probationary period where we've got to perform. That we've got to make sure that we just do everything right, we don't disappoint the boss, we don't do something bad where we screw up, and we're on pins and needles making sure we don't mess up, and Lent makes us even more worried about how much we're messing up, because somehow we think that that's just the starting line of this probationary period, and that the real job starts over there when we die. I think for some of us, that's where we picture it, that, okay, I've done enough, now finally when I go and meet St. Peter at heaven, okay, I'll get my review and see if I get that title of Son of God or Daughter of God, and I'll finally hear whether I'm approved of by my Father. That's not the way that I read the Bible. That we don't just enter in our baptism into a period of just trying to prove ourselves. But the whole point is we start with God's pleasure. We start with our identity. And when we start with our identity and God's pleasure, then we're no longer being manipulated by the things of the world. We're no longer being manipulated by our appetites to make us feel worthy, because we know we're worthy. We're no longer being manipulated by other people to be approved by them, because my self-identity is not defined by whether you like me or not. My identity is defined by the fact that God loves me. And then the way that I use power, I don't need to manipulate anybody to try to do what I want them to do, because I realize that the gifts I'm given are to help serve other people, and not manipulate them to do what I want them to do for me. So when we understand who we are, then our sense of identity is not bouncing up and down based on our performance level. But when we know who we are, our ability to serve is set free because of just that sense of knowing this is what I'm here for. You don't need to tell me the rules about how I need to avoid messing up, because that's who I am. Sort of like when in dating. It's like, this is who I am. It's not like I need to have this rule that tells me to not go too far in dating. This is who I am. I've chosen to be someone who honors the other person. I wait till I'm married. You might get the same results, but one of them is based on buckling down and trying to avoid doing the wrong thing. And the other is based on, this is who I am. I'm just going to do this because this is who I am. So does that make sense? But I think this Lent, I invite you to not just automatically feel empty and feel like I need to buckle down and be more disciplined and do more right things because I'm worried I haven't qualified my way into heaven. Maybe this Lent is not a time to get busier here in this area of trying to prove ourselves. But maybe this Lent is time to actually spend more time back here and saying, you know what did you say to me again when I was baptized? I forgot. Help me to remember who you said I am. Help me to remember that you're pleased with me before I do anything to deserve it. Because my problem is not my performance. My problem is I forgot who I am. Amen.